Hey everybody, it's Jason Lowe. You can call me JLowe, and we are back with another AI Diatribe podcast episode. This time I am joined by my special guest, Deric Frost, who happens to be the CEO of Reelay.ai. Hey Deric, how you doing?
I'm doing really well, Jason. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, you bet. And today we're going to talk a little bit about the future of AI in meetings. This episode is going to be called Beyond Summaries, the future of AI in meetings. And we're going to talk about some really fun and interesting stuff related to how you guys are using AI, what you're recognizing, at least as far as AI in meetings and stuff like that. And then we'll tangentialize wherever we want, talking about music, bass guitar playing, whatever you want to talk about. But first off, I think it would be really good to give those that are listening to this a little bit of background. So do you mind giving us a little bit of the brief origin story of Reelay? I mean, how did this come about? How did you decide that you wanted to create this company? What was the motivation behind?
Yeah, happy to. So briefly, back at the tail end of the pandemic, when we were all moving into a hybrid first, digital first world, if you remember, our meetings got a whole lot worse than they were beforehand. And I was operating a company dealing with the same issues that everyone else was dealing with. What happened to our meetings? There's no engagement. We don't know who said what in the last meeting. And being virtual first was really difficult. So I, at the time, tried to lean into asynchronous meetings using a tool, a screen recording tool called Loom.com. And I just found that while it kept people out of more meetings, it didn't help with engagement at all. There was really no interaction and we lost sense of it. So I thought, you know what? Let me pull some people out of my deck. Let me see if I can go solve this problem myself. And so that was the genesis and the catalyst for Reelay. How do we use technology to make meetings more productive, more engaging, and reduce the administrative load?
That is actually quite interesting. And for, this podcast is not a pitch for Reelay. So just so that everybody that's listening, we're going to talk a little bit about Reelay, but Deric is here to talk about AI specifically. We're not making this a commercial. That being said, I have had a demo of the Reelay product that you gave. I really liked it. It's good stuff. So let's talk a little bit about kind of how things are and a little bit of the different differentiating pieces that the players in this space have. First off, let's talk about this surge of AI tools that are focusing on meeting productivity. I mean, what do you think's behind that? What do you think is really driving that? Is it because people are looking for a problem to solve with AI, or is there a problem to solve with it?
Well, there's been books written on it. This meeting problem existed long before the advent of AI in meetings, right? Death by meetings. Meetings suck. People hate meetings. And so,
what are you talking about, man? I love meetings. Come on.
So businesses realize that meetings are critical. Probably 50% or more of the information that revolves around a business happens inside of meetings. The opportunity to solve some of the big problems associated with meetings, I think, entrepreneurs, technologists, and users inside of meetings alike have all flooded to that scene. Here's a problem that's needed to be solved for so long that has many problems inside of it. Let's solve it once and for all.
Well, it's interesting because, the COVID thing really did propagate meetings, but it also propagated meetings about meetings and meetings after meetings and things like that. So it's like suddenly everybody is remote and doing all of these tons of meetings when normally they would just walk around the corner and talk to somebody in the office, which is making this even more valuable, right? Because doing a virtual meeting does take time. You got to schedule it. You've got to make sure your equipment's right. And so anything you can do to make those more efficient is definitely a good thing. So now let's talk a little bit about your competitors. Let's talk a little bit about the space. So you compete directly or indirectly with things as wide and varied as Otter.ai, Zoom AI Companion, Zoom Meetings, Fireflies.ai. I mean, I know there are elements of those platforms you do compete directly with, but there are other things that you're trying to do to differentiate yourself from those competitors. So what are some of those things that you're doing?
So I think maybe if we back up a little bit, there seems to be two lanes that this AI meeting productivity space has been going down the past couple of years. One is a personal AI meeting assistant, and the other is we need to deploy something for organizational change. And so the majority, I would say, of the really great companies out there like Otter, like Fireflies, most of what they've brought to market originally and what a lot of people have reached for is, note taking, for example, for me is a personal experience. And so I will get something personally like an Otter AI or a Fireflies, and I will use that personally. And that works great for me. I don't have to take notes. It'll do a lot of things for me. We have never been focused in that space, the personal note taking or personal AI meeting productivity space. We recognized early on that the bigger your company gets, the bigger this problem is going to get. Think of an all hands meeting that happens globally. So from the beginning, we were looking at the other side. So the other lane where the competitive set is happening is more on the Microsoft Copilot side, but becoming on the Zoom AI companion side as well. A large organization has a large install of a video conferencing tool called Microsoft or Zoom. And that large organization wants this type of productivity gain even more than the personal people do. So what's the big difference between the two? The big difference is just how much, in my view, what is your long-term goal for what's happening here? If you're looking for short-term productivity gains, I want something to take notes for me in one meeting and give me action items for one meeting. The Fireflies and the Otter AIs of the world are great for that. If you're looking for organizational change, I believe that AI can strip all of the great data that I've been looking for to improve my business and my meetings for years. I think AI can help me do a better job of that. Then you start to lean into the Microsoft Copilots of the world. That's more in the space that Reelay lives. And if we think about Reelay competitively down that track, it's more about the battle of interoperability versus interoperability. So Reelay, like the Otter AIs and Fireflies of the world, will connect to any video conferencing tool. Over here on the other side, where we actually compete, Microsoft and Zoom, they only really work internally with themselves.
Well, okay, so you mentioned something that makes me wonder. You're trying to play in this, or not trying to, you are, but you're playing in this mid-market, small enterprise, large enterprise space. That's really your target customer base. But the larger a company is, the more likely it is that they're going to be able to develop in-house AI tools. And I don't think that that's restricted to just Gen AI or LLM and, different things like that for knowledge bases and a variety of other things. There's got to be companies out there that are looking to solve this type of problem with their own meeting software or their own meeting stuff. For example, this is an indirect correlation, but we all know that Klarna got rid of their Salesforce and their Workday licenses because they used vibe coding to build their own CRM. And building your own CRM is going to be, to a certain extent, a little bit more complex than, a video meeting platform at times. So how do you compete against that? How do you see this competition, these in-house custom-built tools, and how do you position yourself against them?
So there are so many, we've got clients who are building some in-house AI tools. We see it more on the chatbot side than we do in other places. There are things where people are looking to, agentify things, and usually that starts with chatbots. Can we reach into our knowledge base, and can we make things happen there? The world of conversational AI, how you integrate in between multiple layers of tools, different LLMs, how you train that over time, what the security parameters are for internal and external conversations, has a lot more depth to it than I think people are looking to build internally. And really, it comes down to the classic question of, we need this technology. We're going to build it. Are we going to buy it? Or are we going to partner with someone for it? And we're seeing a lot of that come out now, even in the Copilot space, where large companies are recognizing that this is just too expensive for us. Well, the cost to partner there or build it yourself is millions upon millions of dollars. So if you've got the desire to build a team in-house like that, then you can do it. We don't see a ton of it happening now on the meeting side and the call side, but probably more on the chatbot side.
Okay, that's fair, for sure. And being in the CX world, I completely agree with that. That's kind of where things seem to be going first, because that's the lowest hanging fruit, right? That's the most applicable use case of a generative AI LLM engine. So since you're doing this, let's dive a little technical here for a minute. Like, tell me a little bit more about the technical back. I know, but I am an engineer at heart. Tell me a little bit more about the technical backbone of Relay. I mean, what are the different pieces of the platform that you're utilizing? Where are you hosted? If you're comfortable divulging that, where are these proprietary models living? Are you using fully proprietary models or other models? What's the backbone look like?
Yeah, so we're not using, and intentionally, we're not using proprietary LLMs. We're not using proprietary models. We are using a proprietary engine in the middle for how we process data and what we do with it, how we deliver it on the other side, and how we consume it, how we train it, how we improve it. So really in the middle, it's that for us. If we had there are so many good transcription services out there to plug into. There are so many good LLMs out there to plug into. It really doesn't make sense. And I don't think any of our competitors, maybe Microsoft, but including Zoom, are really looking to do much of that themselves because so many other companies are doing such a good job of that. It would be like, the last question you had about, well, what's stopping your clients from building all of that internally? It also doesn't make sense for us to build our own LLM internally. A lot of different reasons around that. What I will say though about the tech stack is for us being in the mid-market to enterprise space, it's critically important that we're secure, that it's not just table stakes, SOC 2, GDPR, HIPAA compliance, but where can we have private hosting around the models, around the data? And so for us, that comes by way of AWS, Azure, individual environments, that those things are happening. Relay is not I'll just call it Chat GPT wrapper product. It's a lot more secure than that.
Gotcha. So it's interesting you mentioned this hybrid structure. I like how you have and your own proprietary LLM that's basically serving as a bit of a traffic cop, right? It's kind of diverting things where it needs to go to be dealt with the best. But what are you doing to make sure that stays up to date? Is that based on an open source weighted model? Do you have it so that you can swap in or swap out as necessary? How do you have that set up on at least that front traffic cop end?
Yeah, we basically have supervised AI that for the most part, let's call it 80% of it is being trained to do the right things before we send it off to a client for them to consume whatever they're consuming on the other end. But we do use a human element in there as well. We use human QA, sometimes just to spot check all the way through, in a pilot type of engagement to help our customers really narrow in on the type of data that we're collecting and refining and publishing for them. Now, that's a heavy burden. That's a heavy lift. I can't imagine that any of our competitors have gone down that same path as us to have supervised AI, human-based supervised AI, quality assurance. But we recognize we're really more bought into the long-term strategy of the data itself. I don't know that companies yet realize that using tools like this should be leading them to making business decisions on a daily, weekly, monthly basis. They're collecting all of this data, they're summarizing it, they're pulling out takeaways, they're pushing it into other systems, and it is a replacement for humans having done that previously. Now, we get a lot of benefit from AI doing it for us. It makes it a lot more scalable, it strips out the bias, standardized procedures. But is it the right information? Or are we going all the way into hallucinating and making bad decisions based on what the AI is telling us, frankly? And so for us, we don't believe yet that it's time to pull out of supervised AI. We want as much data, clean data, accurate data as possible so that companies can build the future of the way that they're thinking about how they operate their businesses from that hyper accurate data that's coming out of Relay.
Okay, but with human in the loop, that introduces, quite frankly, a security risk, right? If you have a human in the loop, you're possibly exposing proprietary or personally identifiable information to the very supervisors that are checking things out and trying to further train the engine to be more efficient and more effective. So how are you safeguarding against that? What are you doing And this is really applicable for like those larger enterprise clients in the space that you're wanting to play in. What are you doing to make sure that that is dealt with correctly?
We're not showing the actual conversation. We're not showing the words. We're not showing ourselves the transcript. We know that for our clients and for our product, there are certain types of data points. There are certain moments inside of meetings, and we know what the desirable construct of that artifact looks like. I'll give you an example. A meeting should have maybe 10 action, a good meeting should maybe have 10 action items. Let's call it 10 really good action items per 45-minute conversation. And so we, from a human perspective, can see on our dashboard how many action items were pulled out of this conversation. Not what is the action item, but how many action items are there. What's the length of a question or a discussion point, right? Is our system telling us that a 30-minute conversation has 60 questions in it, and those 60 questions have each 2 words in them, right? Think about the questions that you might ask in a meeting. What's that? Right now, if you let AI do it on its own, what's that potentially becomes something way down the stream that gets used. Think about how that gets machine learned over time, right? So it's less about, from a security and safety perspective, it's much less about what did someone say, and it's more about what should moments inside of a meeting look like, and are we getting that kind of valuable data point, and in the right number and right order.
Okay. Boy, you're adding a little bit of context to the whole, can you hear me now? Is your camera working? Are you on mute?
Exactly.
Type of a thing, yeah.
And if you look at some of these other tools, and I've tested them all, and I don't mean to dive into the sales pitch, but you get that. You really do, right? And I go back to what's the end game? Is the end game short-term productivity gains for an enterprise company? Or is the end game we can leverage this data to make our business much better? And if you say we can leverage this data to make our business much better, then that means you should want as much data as possible. And if you want as much data as possible, you better not be getting, can you hear me now, out of your AI meeting or AI call tool.
That's fair. Any other interesting or notable lessons that you've learned in working with these larger enterprise clients versus something a little bit more mid-market or small?
Yeah, the biggest one, 2 of the biggest findings. 1, large companies aren't looking to have less meetings. When we first, early hypothesis was, if we can reduce your number of meetings by 20%, here's the ROI. That fell flat on its back. Our large customers are not looking to have less meetings. They might be looking to have better meetings. Really what they're looking for is take some of this administrative work away from me as much as possible. And so that was one learning along the way. And another thing that kind of coincided into that learning from a product perspective was take some of this administrative work, or take as much of this administrative work away from me. Note-taking, follow-ups, recaps, summaries, searchability, all that. Take as much of that away from me as possible, up to 100%. And in exchange for that, I actually don't want to put in any work in exchange for that. Meaning, don't ask me to review anything before you publish it. Don't ask me to go and schedule anything on my calendar and connect Reelay to it. Don't ask me to go in and pre-build an agenda. Even though you're going to pull away 90% of the administrative work, I'm not going to put in 1% effort to get that 90% gain. So we had to build something that was as seamless as possible. So those were the 2 really big learnings that connected together. We actually don't want to have less meetings. All we want is for you to do all of the work for us.
So this is interesting because this means that you as a company, because of what your customer base is looking for in efficient meeting capabilities, you mentioned, I don't want to have to approve reaching into my calendar and scheduling something. You're really going to be driving the adoption of agentic AI capability within your platform if you haven't already. I mean, are you down the road as far as agentic capabilities are concerned?
In terms of scheduling?
Mm-hmm. Or anything, really, for that matter.
Yeah, so we are we're cautiously being agentic, right? So that kind of goes back into the human element of this for us. We're a little bit more SaaS plus service at this stage of AI adoption curve in business than we are agentic. Over time, I think there's more learnings to truly be agentic. I think there's a lot going on in the agentic side that at large scale at a large company provides a little bit more risk and unknown and shadow IT than it does more productivity gains. If you shift back over to the personal AI meeting assistant space, if I'm using it for myself, I feel like there's a lot more fit for a lot of the more agentifying all of the things in the workflow than there is on our side. And dealing with enterprise customers, we could have 100 enterprise customers who operate 100 different businesses. And so it's hard to build features and functionality like that are going to fit for everybody.
Well, so what I'm hearing you say is that as of today, May 2025, agentic AI is not ready, nor is it close to being ready. Would you say that's fair?
I think that's fair for large customers, for large organizations. Yes, I think that's fair.
So you're saying it could be ready for smaller customers?
I think it's more ready for smaller customers because smaller customers are user by user, are paying closer attention to what the tool is doing and are interacting with the tool more.
That is a very interesting perspective because the people that are really diving into trying to figure out what to do with agentic AI are these larger enterprise companies. And what you're saying is there's a tangible benefit for smaller companies to explore using agentic AI because it might be a little bit more applicable because it's a little easier managed and it's a little smaller in scope.
Yeah.
Would you say that's accurate?
I think that's accurate, yes.
Okay. Interesting point. All right. So let's whip out our crystal ball for a second and let's try and look a little further into the future. So obviously there's the summaries bit. Obviously there's some of this potential agentic AI capability that we're talking about where we could reach into schedules and schedule meetings and create task lists and different things like that. Are there any other pieces where you see AI really transforming the meeting experience? What else can be done? I mean, we're seeing instances of avatars being set up for meetings where people are just talking and walking around the room and being goofy, but their avatar is on screen being very prim and very proper, dressed nicely, totally attentive in the meeting, even if the individual is not. I mean, that's obviously one fringe case of use of AI is for personal, quote unquote, productivity gain where they can fake doing something that they're not. But what other things are you going to see affecting meetings?
I'll go back, and I apologize for doing this, but when I think about employees at any company, as an operator, I spent most of my career as a COO at companies. And I believe strongly that every employee needs to be placed at their highest and best use. I think that every employee at every company, if we can find a way to give employees more time for focused work, for deep work, and to be supported in that way with the people, processes, and tools that help them find that space, that our companies will be much more productive, they'll be much more useful, and a lot of the waste naturally goes away. So anything inside of a business meeting or a business call that can get me better prepared for operating inside of, if I am inside of it, following up afterwards, and in a long-term sense, providing me with the type of information that if I had a right-hand person who followed me to all of my meetings and was guiding me along the way, here's how to do things better in the future. Hey, is this the type of information that you're looking for, thinking about? Then I'll be much more productive and I'll be spending more time on more meaningful work. How does that manifest itself inside of a meeting? Well, AI can listen, right? If you've committed yourself to as much call data as possible, meetings, calls, et cetera, AI can do a good job of being inside of your knowledge base during your discussions. Hey, is this what you're looking for, Jason? You mentioned this. Okay, sales manager wrote inside of the agenda that we're going to talk about Q4 opportunities, or we're going to talk about what our forecast looks like. If you've committed yourself to getting AI into all of that data, then AI can start surfacing that for you. You don't have to bring the humans into the room. Did you spend 2 hours before here combing through the CRM to look for opportunities to tell me about? Did you update the CRM? Well, if 50% or more of that information is inside of your meetings and your calls, then AI should be able to machine that work for you. So I see it
Interesting.
kind of before, in, and around the important conversational pieces.
That's interesting. Two thoughts came to mind as you were talking. The first one is that on the CX side, there's this phenomenon of usage of AI, specifically around agent assistance. So an AI-driven thing that's going to help the call center agent or customer service personnel do their job more efficiently and more effectively by presenting them with information that they need, from speech recognition of what's going on the phone call. What you're talking about is just about the same thing, but it's attendee assistance, basically, as far as meetings are concerned. That's an interesting perspective.
Yeah, and over a long period of time too, right? And the more information that AI assistant gets, the smarter it's going to be for you over time. You know, the more competitive it's going to make you as an employee, all the way up to the more competitive it's going to make you as a company.
Okay, good point. All right, so this is a wacky question, but I'm going to ask it anyway because this is what came to mind when you were talking earlier. Are you an Ayn Rand fan?
I'm
Are you
not.
like you're an Atlas Shrugged objectivism fan at all?
I'm
Okay.
the antithesis of an Ayn Rand fan.
Okay, interesting. Because the objectivist philosophy, at least as it is espoused in Atlas Shrugged, is all about letting individuals meet their full potential. And this is kind of what you were espousing, at least as far as giving people and enabling them to reach their full potential and do absolutely everything they could. I just was drawing a parallel there that may or may not exist, but I thought I had at least asked the question.
Yeah, so it's different for me. And the reason why it's different from objectivism is because I am thinking more, and go all the way back to the beginning of Relay. The bigger your company gets, the bigger your organization gets, the bigger this problem is to solve. I am thinking about it in terms of a group of people, an organization of people, not as an individual. That organization, that bigger group, is going to be more successful by helping its individuals be more successful. But the individuals are helping to point towards whatever that northern star is. So I suppose the objectivist view would be a little bit more fireflies and otter than Relay.
That's fair. That's a pretty good analogy. All right. This has been a very interesting conversation. I do have a question for you, and this might be a little interesting. So you are all about introducing a lot of companies to utilizing AI. So if you had to go out there and give some advice to companies that are looking to figure out how to incorporate AI into their company, because we know that this is happening, right? There are CEOs of companies that are grabbing somebody and bringing them in and saying, you're the AI champion, go enable AI wherever you possibly can. And the person's freaking out, doesn't have a clue where to start or what to do. So if you were talking to that person, or that CEO for that matter, what do you think would be, at least as far as a piece of advice or two, for businesses that are looking to integrate AI into their business, into their workflows? What's your advice?
Go back to my consulting days. First, let's forget about AI in general. Let's think about, what business problems do you have to solve? What are your top 3 business problems that you have to solve? Let's understand that AI is a tool in your tool chest that you could use to solve many business problems. But let's first just talk about, what are the top 3 business problems that you have to solve. If what you struggled with last year, last quarter, is revenue related, or if it's productivity related, or whatever the marketing related, whatever the issue is that is stuck in your craw that you need to solve for, let's document that first. Let's put AI, let's see if there's a solution for AI against any one of those things. Let's go out and do a little bit of research. Let's see if AI can help us solve that problem. And then let's try to get committed to, where across the entire spectrum can AI solve the problem. For me, that happened inside of Relay. I wasn't thinking about using AI at the beginning of Relay at all. I was thinking about asynchronous meetings, distribution of meetings, keeping people out of meetings. It wasn't until a designer came to me in the prototyping phase and said, hey, I think what you're trying to do could really benefit from an AI component. And this is 6 months before OpenAI and ChatGPT hit the scene. And I looked at it as a business owner and said, now that's interesting. That could help us solve a problem. Let's try to layer that into our product, AKA our solution to solving a problem. And I would just recommend that any business owner thinks about AI that way. What problems do we have to solve? Can AI solve it for us? Is there something else that can solve it for us better? I think over time, you're going to find that a lot of the useless heavy lifting can be done with the help of AI. And then you'll see that there's a big garden of AI plants from there.
But you hit the nail right on the head, right? To get to that point, AI is not something you just buy off the shelf and try and find a place to fit it in, right? What you have to do is you have to get down to the root of the very big problems. And then once you understand the process, once you understand the problem, soup to nuts, and have a real good idea of what's actually going on, then you can bring to bear the power of AI to help and do that heavy lifting. But the only way that you're going to understand what AI can do in that sense is, one, if you understand the process front to back, every way, which way, sideways, whatever. And two, if you understand how AI works specifically as it relates to generative AI, because that's the most popular and useful thing right now in the terms of pattern recognition or, other things like that that could be brought to bear to help these different things. And then this is going to be even more fun and exciting as Agentic AI becomes more further developed and becomes a little bit more mature. We're entering a real exciting time now, I think. So, all right. So
I would agree.
Pretty much hit the end of our time. Deric, thank you so much for being on here. I really appreciate the time that you've spent. We haven't spent any time talking about bass, but I got to ask you one question. What is your main bass guitar? What is the guitar you use?
1992 USA Fender Jazz Bass Plus.
I'm a Warwick guy. I've got a 99 P5 Thumb Corvette Warwick. It's been my main axe for a long, long time, and it's a beautiful, beautiful thing. But yeah, Fenders, yummy stuff. You're a 4 or a 5-string guy?
The older I get, the more I think I should be back to my roots and be a 4-string guy. Maybe I'm just getting lazy in the middle of the board with the 5-string, but I just can't help myself. I want it as low as it can go. There's got to be at least one brown note, as I would put it, at least one brown note somewhere, and I need the 5 to really do that.
There's something about the rattle of a low B, baby. It's just yummy. All right. Well, again, thank you so much for the time that you've spent today. Everybody, Deric Frost, CEO of Reelay.ai. Really appreciate your time and appreciate everyone. If you've made it this far, you know what people normally say at the end of podcasts. Do the whole like, subscribe, follow thing, whatever it is that you need to do so that you can follow future episodes of this. And we'll see you in a future cast. Thanks again, Deric.
Thanks, Jason. It's been a pleasure.
And cut.